Most companies, if they're doing it right, are getting tons of inquiries from their website and lead forms. But when leads come in, usually two things happen. They either get ignored and no one ever follows up, or teams are taking every meeting and wasting tons of time on unqualified leads. So in this video, I'll show you how to use AI to build a complete lead generation follow-up system. That way you or your clients can spend less time on admin work and reviewing leads and more time actually closing the deals. As usual, we'll start from scratch and we'll use make.com and AI to enrich the leads data automatically, score and prioritize them with AI. We'll use AI to send a personalized email. And finally, we'll alert the team in Slack. All right, let's get started. Most organizations have some type of funnel set up. So they have multiple entries for a lead. So it's like a website form or a lead magnet. LinkedIn has like lead forms, Facebook, and so like all these places have different opportunities for leads to come in. The thing with the leads coming in is many companies end up falling into this trap of either ignoring the leads or they end up taking all of the leads and don't have a good way to qualify the leads and end up wasting lots of time. And we'll go through the architecture here, but what I'm about to walk through is something that I've built for other clients of mine. And the idea is, how do you have the process automated, especially now with AI, to be able to use OpenAI to qualify a lead based on certain parameters, decide what to do with that lead, and then respond accordingly. Also, we can like update the team, those types of things too. Now, with any automation, we need some type of trigger. So I'm going to use Webflow. My website is on Webflow and they have this form feature, and I'll use this like sample form as an example as our trigger. But there's lots of different places you can get leads flowing in. So I've worked with many different clients and many different examples from where those leads are coming from. And one is social lead magnets. So this would be like LinkedIn ads, Facebook ads. Those might go to a landing page and we want to be able to process those accordingly. Email is a good place, just like a hello at email. If you have people sending questions, those a lot of times get forgotten, but people might have questions that might lead to a sale. But they also have a lot of junk. So you might want to put AI up in front of that to process those to see if it's even potentially a lead before you even qualify that it's a lead. Calendly booking pages. I have had clients who have great funnels, and the end of the funnel is a book a meeting page through Calendly or some other type of form. And what happens is they identify them as like not qualified. So now you have this meeting on your calendar that you don't want to spend the 15 or 20 minutes with the potential prospect that's not a good fit. So you could actually build the AI to process it, identify if that is a qualified lead or not, and then cancel the meeting and say like, hey, it doesn't seem like a really good fit, and have some type of interesting follow-up that they could do. And like LinkedIn lead gen forms, and it's not just LinkedIn, there's lots of different places that have built-in lead gen forms. There's like intercom conversations or any chatbot conversation that might also turn into a lead. Even like forms, like Typeform, anything, Airtable, Google Forms, those types of things. So again, I'm going to start with Webflow with my site, and the triggers could be anything. We'll kind of walk through a few options once we're in the scenario and building it out. And then we'll go and enrich the data with Apollo. And there's a unique way we have to do that. We actually do it through an API call. It's not really built into the Apollo module, but it is possible. If you're not familiar with Apollo, Apollo is a fantastic tool for enriching data. So for example, someone gives you their first name and email, but they didn't give you their company. They didn't give you the company's revenue. They didn't give you the company's head count. Apollo allows you to get all that information, and we'll walk through how to do that. Then we'll qualify the lead with OpenAI, which pretty much means we're going to set some parameters on what makes a good prospect, and then we'll match those against what we found from the Apollo enrichment. So this is going to come in here, and it's going to say, this person is the VP of marketing at this company, and the company has 200 employees, and their revenue size is $6 million. And then we down here are going to say, we're looking for companies who have above $2 million in revenue and have 50 plus employees. And they would say, yes, they're a match, or no, they're not a match. We do something else with them. And then we'll save that data into, I'm going to use HubSpot. You can put it in any CRM. HubSpot tends to be a very popular one when I'm working with clients. A lot of them have HubSpot, but you could put these in like Google. It's a terrible arrow. You could put these in Google Sheets or Airtable, Click, Pipedrive, Salesforce, like whatever. The idea is like it's very similar. I personally actually use Notion just because I kind of have everything automated through Notion, but HubSpot, again, tends to be a very popular platform that a lot of my clients are on. So it's a good one to walk through how to do it. And then we'll create like this email reply, and ideally we can personalize this a little bit. So the idea is this feels like it's from an actual human and it's not an auto reply. So it doesn't feel like, thanks for your submission, we'll get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. It actually feels like the person noticed something about them, saw they're at a company, hey, it's a good fit, and potentially, hey, like here's a link to my calendar, grab some time, or hey, we've worked with your types of industries before. I'd love to show you what we've done. Or on the other side, they're not a good fit, and we follow up with again saying like, hey, cry face emoji, I don't think we're a good fit. Here are some potential partners that you might want to go reach out to who work with smaller businesses. Go work with our partner. Here's a link. And then ultimately, we'll actually send the email, which is probably the easiest part. And then we'll notify the team that something happened. So a new lead came in, they were qualified. We sent them an email. Hope to hear back from them soon. So that's the whole flow. It's pretty straightforward and it shouldn't take us too long to build. And this is also a very fun one. So let's go get started building it. Like always, or almost always, I'm going to start from a blank make.com canvas. And we'll build this from scratch. First, let's grab our Webflow trigger because we really want to just make sure we can get a lot of these connected first before we do a lot of the crazy logic. And we need to create a webhook within Webflow, which a webhook, if you're not familiar with, pretty much sits there and listens for events and says, hey, let me know if anything happens. And we're specifically going to listen for a form being submitted on our Webflow page. And I've already connected to Webflow and it's very straightforward. You just click add and it has you log in and set some permissions. And then this is actually creating our Webflow webhook URL. And we just have to pick the site, which is this HyperEdge site. And then we want to pick our trigger type. And there's lots of different trigger types, but we want the form submission and save. And this magically connects all the stuff. So it connects it on Webflow, connects it on make.com, and it should just automatically work out of the box. So let's save that. And actually, let's just give it a quick test. I'm gonna click run. And it's gonna sit here and listen. So pretty much what we would do once this goes live, we would turn this on and it's always listening. But in our test environment right now, we're just going to have it check pretty much once that the webhook is coming in. So if I come over to my form here, which is just our form on our Webflow page, so we can pretend someone's going to come in here and say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about our services. I'm going to use my other agency's email. So this is my email for our agency that uses AI to do content creation for large companies. And the input is just going to be test message, honestly, for now, because we just want to see if we're connected. So let's do a get plan. And then I come back to make, and you can see it already ran. And we have our data, which is great. So the data should be name, email, and the message, which is great. So this is the data that we can now use moving forward. And this is where the fun part gets, because we say if someone only submits their name and email, how do we get all the other information to see if they are actually qualified and meet our requirements to actually work with us? Let's grab Apollo, which I already mentioned, but Apollo is a tool that allows us to enrich data. So if you're not familiar with Apollo, it's apollo.io. You can sign up. I'm not affiliated with them at all. I just have used them for years and they're pretty inexpensive. They have a free account where you can get a bunch of data. You might need the next tier. I think I'm on the much higher tier. You can get a ton of data for free. And honestly, you can actually run a lot of your outbound systems on this tool. But a big portion of what I like to use it for is the enrichment and like finding companies. Now, the Apollo app within here doesn't actually have an enrichment like module. So I've found that you need to actually just make a API request. This is a little more advanced, but I'll walk you through it. It's really not that complicated, but sometimes the data you need isn't actually accessible through a typical module within an app. So you need to do a custom API call. So that's what we're going to do. So let's jump over to the API docs just to see what we're working with. And the two specifically we're looking for are people enrichment and the organization enrichment. So first we'll start with the people enrichment. And the point is we got a first name, a last name, and an email, and we want to try and get all the other information we can. Technically, we could have asked for that within the form, and that's possible, and we might, but what's the point when we can actually just go and get the data automatically, and then we don't have to bug the user to like go crazy inputting a ton of information. And the endpoint we're looking for is pretty much this one over here. So this is showing an example of a post request, a curl post request, and then it gives us this URL of what we want. So if we want to put in our email here, it's going to give us an example of what the URL is going to look like over here. So it pre-filled in my email up here and updated the URL with my email. I could put my name if I wanted to and try it again. And you can see the URLs getting updated. Actually, it's really hard to see. There we go. You can see the URLs getting updated. But the main point is we're going to copy this over to our make scenario. So this is where we're going to put in the URL. You can see it a little clearer here. So we have match, and then we have these query params. Technically, I can leave it here, but I'm actually going to move them down here just in this query string. This does the same thing. Ultimately, it will, when it makes a request, it will rebuild this URL, but I don't want to have to mess with all the variables coming in here within this string, so I'm just going to put them down below. So I'm going to grab email. We're going to say, put in the query string down here, and then we can connect it to our email. And then we can do, what was it, first name? Actually, I think there was an option for that. Here, name. So we can actually just put in the full name. So I don't have to worry about trying to slice that apart. Name and our name parameter. And then we can get rid of the rest of this. I already checked. Those aren't required. You can just get rid of them. By default, they're false. So we can just drop that. And then the final piece is we have to update the URL. It actually needs to be a relative path, so we can drop everything before the URL or the domain name. And the final thing I'll mention with this specific Apollo endpoint is their API documents are incorrect, or I couldn't get it to work. So they have a post. They say this is post, but then they say the organization enrichment is get. So I tried everything to work with the post request, and I could not get it to work. I finally switched it to a get request, just like the organization enrichment, and it worked. So I will give you that tidbit in case you are also stuck. Save, and then let's grab the company too. Grab our API, come over here, get the organization enrichment. I'm just going to grab this URL, throw it in our field. This one's going to be a GET request. So we'll come down to our query params, type in domain, which is what I wanted, right? Yep, domain. And then the value, technically we could get this from the previous step of the Apollo enrichment. What I found is sometimes the organization that people submit isn't the one connected to their email. So I'm thinking we actually extract the domain from the email, and you could probably get more advanced and identify, like, is this the person's organization? Is this their email organization based on what comes back from the enrichment? I'm going to keep it simple for now. You can always make it way more advanced. So we're going to do some little logic here, and we're going to split out our email. Just hide my head for a second. We're going to grab the email. We're going to split it at the @ sign. And then we're going to grab the last item from that array. So the split's going to create an array. It's pretty much going to split the first half from the @ sign here in the email and split the second half. And then we want the second half. So we're going to grab the outworks.io because we're going to grab the last item in the array. Hopefully that makes sense. And save that. That should work. We'll go and save it. And then again, we'll run it just as a test person. There's my info. And get anyone's info from Apollo, which is amazing and scary. So there you go. There's all my info in case you were wondering. You can also get it from Apollo if you want to. And then let's look at our org. So we can see our query string sent our domain as we wanted it to. So domain, outworks.io, and then our body, found an organization, and I found it, outworks.io. We have our LinkedIn URL and some other basic info. Cool. Our next step is going to be connecting to HubSpot. So I've already created a HubSpot account, and we are going to create a deal. Create a new deal. Create a deal. Here we go. Create a deal. We'll connect it over here. Now, HubSpot's a great CRM. It's free. I'm not an affiliate for this. I just have used it for a long time, but I have a lot of clients who use it, and I find a lot of companies use it. So it's a good one to understand and be able to have proficiency in. So it has like contacts, companies, deals. That's the main thing we want to do. This is just the basic free account. And what we want to do is mainly focus on deals. So we're going to like spin up a new deal within the CRM. And this is the stage really where you can change this to like whatever your CRM is. For example, I use Notion, but if you're using ClickUp, Monday, Airtable, Pipedrive, Salesforce, so many options. They're all kind of similar. Just like, how do you get data in there? What data do you want to get in there? And most of them have apps within make.com that you can use. So with HubSpot, just like all of them, the connection's super easy. Literally just had me log in. That was it. The view method is really just the how do you want to input data, which is kind of nice because if you click all fields, it's this massive form that's ridiculous, but shows you how much data you can get in there. Let's do compact, and then we'll just go kind of property by property. Really, we're going to keep it simple and just go name for now, and we'll just stick with the organization and like the word deal. So it's pretty much going to say like Outworks deal, or if you're working with like Amazon deal, whatever. We'll go ahead and throw in the amount too. So it's like, how much value is this deal potentially worth? We'll just throw in like, I don't know, $5,000 and save. Aim it. And the other thing we'll want to do is create a contact within HubSpot. HubSpot won't do it automatically because we created the deal. Now, we don't technically have to create a company because the company gets automatically added and generated once you create a user from their like email. But first, we need to get the contact in there. So there's a create or update contact, which is nice because if the contact already exists, it won't create a duplicate contact. It'll just update that contact. Technically, you can put a ton of data in here. I'm going to stick with the basics just to keep this quick. So we'll just get the data from our person record. So we have first name. So we have first name, last name, email, and job title is what I put in, and save. And then the final step, and this isn't necessarily just a HubSpot specific thing. I'm assuming it's most CRMs. I've worked with other ones, and they also require this step. We pretty much need to associate the contact to the deal. Otherwise, we're going to have a deal, and we're going to have a contact, and they're going to be separate, and they won't know about each other. Technically, you go in and manually do it within HubSpot, but we don't want to have to do that. So HubSpot has like an association, create an association. And it has a bunch of different options of what you can associate. So we want to associate a contact to a deal. Now the contact ID comes from our create or update contact, and our deal comes from the deal we created. So here's the ID over here. And you pretty much link those and it does the magic behind the scenes, and we'll go into HubSpot and you'll see what actually shows up. So let's stop there and just see what kind of keep moving. But the goal is going to be that I fill out this form. It's going to enrich the data, and it will then add a contact and a deal to HubSpot. Let me come back and run this before I click submit and come back, and you can see it's running, and we have the trigger, Webflow triggered, our enrichment went through, and then our HubSpot ran. And let's just jump over to HubSpot and see if we got a deal or not. And there's our deal. So it's perfect. So all I put in was, again, the email, and it started pulling this information. So hopefully you can kind of get an idea of like how much info you could get and how powerful this could be if you automated a lot of this. Pretty cool. Now, if we go into the deal, you can see it has one contact that I associated the deal with, and that contact is me. This wouldn't have happened without that association. This would have just been a separate object. Cool. So that's really step one, is having a trigger, like a form, an input, automatically put in the CRM and organize the data. But now let's actually use AI to qualify this lead and then decide how to follow up and also how to update the CRM. So our next step is going to be our OpenAI module. This is my favorite one of my favorite ones. Let's get some stuff, basic stuff set up. O4 Mini is fantastic at the moment. And then we're going to put some of our prompts in. And I'll use one of the prompts that I've been working with for this case. And I'm just going to stick with the user role. And I use my AI prompt formula. I did a video on it. Go check it out. Kind of walks through the steps of what has been working for me within the AI automation space. But I define who this prompt is acting as. So I say it's acting as a lead qualification analyst. It's evaluating incoming information. The task is to process it, identify if this ICP is correct based on the criteria. So this is where you would set your criteria for whatever company you're looking for. For example, if you're like, I want to identify if they have this specific pain point, or if they just hired a new CMO. Different points like that are fantastic. You just have to make sure you put that in the input too. We're going to give it pretty basic for this version just to keep moving. So based on this assessment, I say the output format is going to be JSON, and I really just care, are they qualified? And give me a reason of why they're qualified or not. And that will actually save that in HubSpot. And then a bunch of instructions on use a professional tone, keep logic field under 50 words, which is nice because you don't want it to accidentally like write a book. And then we're just going to put the input data in. I'll just paste this in and then replace this sort of looks like placeholder. And then we'll replace this with our company data. We can do name, and we want enrich organization, revenue. Revenue is not going to actually show up because our company doesn't have revenue in Apollo. So I'll try with a large organization and you see revenue coming through. Say $1 million. Employees, we did have employees. Was it headcount? Estimated number of employees. And then industry. Give us a good baseline for qualification. And then we just need to set our output from text to JSON and then have it parse a JSON. So we don't want it to just return basic plain text. We actually want it to return the JSON object and we can process it accordingly. One important piece is you have to clearly state that you are returning a JSON object, which I have up here. But otherwise, it does a fantastic job of returning the JSON as you expect. Cool. So let's try and see what we get from the AI side of things. Make sure we have that connected too. So let's run the same form again. There we go. It's running. It flew through all the enrichment and CRM data. And let's see result. And qualified is false. And that's perfect. That's what should have happened. So we remember we're looking for companies that had 30 employees or more or something like that. And our company that we used in here only had 6. So it's perfect. Employee count, 6 below the 30 employee threshold. So I'm going to use Brian. I think this was I don't even know his last name, Brian something. And this was like BH at HubSpot. So this is the test email you get from HubSpot. So we'll see if this actually goes through. Let's say Brian, hi there. That'll be his last name. And it went through and ran and already finished. And let's look at what we got. Results. Here we go. True. All right. Meets revenue. So we have over $1 million, employees over 30, and operates in information technology and services, matching the SaaS related industry, which I did add SaaS in there plus marketing just to allow this to go through as a qualification a little easier for our testing. But that's great. The one thing we do need to update is if you remember, I put the revenue as a hard coded number because it wasn't in there yet. So now that it's run, we should have access to that variable. So let's replace this with revenue. Annual revenue. And now from now on, we'll use the actual revenue from the company. And if we go to HubSpot, we can look and see that we have our deal in here. So this is our original we made. This was a test I did that kept failing. So I went back to HubSpot and added the SaaS deal. And if we go to deals, we have the HubSpot deal. And the other ones I kept testing to try and get a qualified deal to go through. So now we have one. Cool. So now we know if it is actually qualified or not. Now let's do something with it. So we'll have another step with AI to create a message. And if you have seen some of my other videos, you know I like to break the prompts down into smaller bite-sized pieces so the task is more focused. I'd have one prompt that just qualifies them, and I'll have another prompt that actually uses that information to craft some type of email that we can send back to them. So let's actually craft this email, and we'll use our same creation prompt to do our completion, choose our model, and then add our message. Again, I'm just going to choose role, keep it simple. And I have a massive prompt that you are welcome to use. This took a bit of time to write. It's still not perfect, but it's pretty close. So if anyone refines it, please share it with me if it works any better. The idea is that it's going through and saying, hey, you're going to be a copywriter, write a short email, and then we give the tasks of like, you're going to get if they're qualified or not and a reason and some relevant information. And then we're saying if the lead is qualified, so remember our last step, it's either going to be true or false. If the lead is qualified, make this email a short, friendly one. And let's mention that it's a great fit and highlight why. And then briefly, like explain the qualification, but we have to be careful that we're not too specific. So what I would run into with this prompt sometimes is that it would then say, hey, it seems like you're a perfect fit because you have your, $100 million in revenue and you have 200 employees, which is super awkward. You would never actually write that. So, I have like, don't mention specific qualifications. We have include a booking link, which we can include easily in here. I'm not going to include one. I'm guessing it'll probably hallucinate one since I have it in there. And then if they're not qualified, we then want it to send a short and friendly and casual email that says, thanks for submission, but we don't want to work with you. And again, this is why prompt engineering is very important because the emails coming out of this originally were something like, hey, it doesn't look like we're a good fit because you only have 3 employees. And I don't think anyone would actually ever write that. So I tried to make it more casual, and you'll see some of the examples. Again, this is not gonna be perfect. Use at your own risk, but I feel like it's a fantastic start to actually follow up. And it might even be worth just writing a template and then having it fill in some information in that template. The output format, we're just gonna output the text this time instead of JSON. The input, we're gonna give it some of the qualification data we talked about, and then the instructions. Here's where we would actually put our booking link, but I'm just gonna put placeholder for now. And then I give it a bunch of examples, and the examples really help. The more examples you have, the better. So you can actually pull from it. So I have a bunch of like input, output, and you're welcome to read through these. As always, my blueprints are free and the prompts are in there and included. So those are free too. You can grab them. And then the final data that we need in here, I just have the qualification is from our last step, and then the reason, which we're including. And I put the bio, the short description for the organization. This is helpful if you wanted to actually respond with a little tidbit from the bio. We don't need to get into the advanced because the output's going to be text. So the text response, and I usually like to bump this up, give it a little more juice. Save it, and let's see what kind of email we get. So I'll come over here and submit our form for the 100th time. And we got a response. We'll assume everything else worked correctly. And let's see what message we got. Now, remember, I submitted this as Outworks, which is not a good fit. So we'll see what the email is. And the email is, thanks so much for sharing more about your founder-led content program and how you help amplify awareness, authority, and trust. So this is where it can get a little awkward. So you might want to cut this out or tighten it up a little bit and just tighten it up a little bit. Like, I don't think I'd actually write that. So it might be like, hey, I glanced at your site and looks like I noticed you do X, Y, and Z, if you want to add something like that, or just take it out. At a glance, it seems like you might be a bit earlier stage and smaller than the companies we typically partner with. Based on team size and revenue info, I'd be happy to make an intro to some of our partners who could be a better fit. Really appreciate you taking the time to connect and wishing you lots of success ahead. Like, that's perfect. I would literally write that. Like, literally, I would write that. That's amazing. This first part, I would not exactly write, but the second part I would write. So I'd probably tighten up the prompt a little bit and say, like, make some remark about how their company looks cool and they solve some interesting problem, and then go into the next step. But this ideally would actually be from me or from the person, from one of the sales team, and it wouldn't be from some automated system. Now, our final step is going to be to reorganize this a little bit, because if the person's not qualified, we really don't want to create a deal. So let's slice and dice this and just move our info here to be after this. So over here and clean this up. Now, based on our qualification, we can have it just skip this step, and we can put a router in here to have our Gmail step. We're gonna send an email connected here. It'll create our router, and this will just organize this a little bit. And we can also put it filter on here, and we can pretty much say if qualified equals true. And then it will actually create the deal and the contact. Oh, actually, we want it to create the contact regardless. So let's move the filter here and do if qualified equals true. So this is going to check if it's qualified, generate the email, and then just for organization, we're going to have it hop up here and create the contact, because we want the contact in HubSpot regardless. And then it will create a deal if the contact and message was qualified. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of logic around storing messages and what would happen if they're not qualified in HubSpot, but there's lots more modules you could do to like update the contact. But we're going to leave it this way and just focus on our email piece. So the last step would be to send our email. And again, I've already connected. The connection is pretty much log in. That was all you need to do. We're going to add the recipient is going to be the person who submitted the email. Our subject can be got your request. And our content will be the output of our last step. That should be it. We'll save that. If you really want to do one final step, I'm going to do the quick one, Slack, do create a message. And this can be, again, for organization, we'll start down here, clean this up a little bit, and we could do a Slack message to a channel, select from list, do just the public channel, and say, like emoji, to our celebrate emoji, say, this contact is qualified. I'm going to keep this simple. You technically could have OpenAI write a little blurb in here too, just for fun. But we'll say is qualified, and then we'll have it say the logic, because some logic, and then we'll say email sent to prospect. We'll have the prospect's email. And so do their name, email, and then the message can be our message back here. So this is like a super basic connection to Slack. I just logged in. It actually posts as me, like as my account. I have a whole video on how to create a Slack bot for make.com. So then it's from like a Slack bot instead of from an actual person. So go check that one out too if you want to make this more advanced. Let's save everything and let's run it and see what it does. And I'll make sure I use my email, because if I use someone else's email, this will actually send an email to that person, which we don't want to. Submit. Let's see if it works. And it worked. And our filter didn't go through, so it didn't create our deal. It would have created our contact, which we've already seen that part. And the more interesting stuff is the Gmail. So it looks like the input was, thanks for sharing. Looks very similar to the last thing we had. And then our message, return a message ID. And I already pulled it up. And you can see there's a couple things wrong. We need to create the person's name, include the person's name. Totally forgot that. And then we need to make sure there's line breaks. So we'll fix that here in a second. But let's all go look at Slack. And you can see some of my past tests are up here from previous scenarios. And then down here is the new message. So it went through. So because qualified false, revenue data is missing, email sent to this person, and then here's the actual message that got sent, which is super cool, which is awesome. So now, leads come in, they can show up in some type of like lead channel. If you want to in Slack, you watch them. You could have them ignore the false ones, the non-qualified ones, maybe only show the qualified ones if you're getting tons of them. But this is super cool to tie all this together, and it would all work just by someone submitting a form, which is awesome. So hopefully this was helpful. We went from having a single like email and first name in an input field all the way to enriching them and putting them in the CRM and qualifying them and creating an email and sending email. All that would be working automatically. You notice I didn't use that message box. Another advanced step you could do is actually qualify them based on like some type of message that came through. So if they put their project details, if they had an actual like RFP that they're submitting, you could use. So it can get way more advanced. Obviously depends on what you want or what your client wants or your business wants, and you would modify it accordingly. But I think this is a great foundation to build upon. And as usual, all my blueprints are free and the prompts are in there. So go download those. And if you found value, please like, subscribe, and check out my next video.